Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. My guest this time is Charly Joung, who is a retired competitive powerlifter and turning his attention to bodybuilding. And I think he's most known for his work along with Renaissance Periodization, as well as being Dr. Mike Israetel's training partner. I hope you enjoy. Let's just jump right in. Well, I'd love to start off, first of all, with a bit about how you got into fitness and who are you in general, just as an introduction.
Okay, great. Yeah. My name is Charly Joung. I started lifting and got into fitness around when I was, I would say, 13 or 14 years old. I'm currently 32, so I've been in this a while now. I started lifting and training in my parents' basement with a set of sand-filled weights. I think like a lot of young adolescent men start in training. Joined the gym, kind of fell in love with it. Years and years down the line, in my early 20s, I found powerlifting. Fell in love with that pretty quickly. Loved the whole, aspect of pushing yourself really hard towards a goal. And I just found out I was fairly decent at it. A couple of years ago, I decided to stop or quote unquote retire from powerlifting just due to recurring nagging injuries. Never had any big injuries, knock on wood, but I figured I see a lot of my peers kind of have career-ending injuries in powerlifting, and I just didn't want to get to that point, so I kind of switched over to bodybuilding at that point and quickly fell in love with that too. And now I strictly train for hypertrophy, and my diet follows in suit of that pursuit. Besides that, I am the director of operations for Renaissance Periodization as my day job, and very lucky to be part of a company that is evidence-based in their approach to fitness and nutrition. Anything else you'd like to know about me?
I think I'd love to know a bit about your affiliation with Renaissance Periodization. How was it working with Dr. Mike Israetel and the entire crew? And in general, how did you get in touch with him? How did you manage to be a part of that whole company?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start from when I actually met Mike. It was maybe 4 to 5 years ago, probably closer to 4. He was visiting Philadelphia. That's where I live. He was visiting Dr. James Hoffman, which is one of our coaches and actually content creators for RP. Met up with them to hang out. We kind of hit it off from there, and then soon thereafter, Mike moved to Philly because he and James started jobs as professors at Temple University in the I'm not sure what exact department, the exact name of the department is, but something to do with fitness and or nutrition there. I was working I was working a standard finance job. That's what I went to school for. But slowly, I kind of started having an interest, I guess, in the whole in what RP does, and luckily enough, I was offered a job through RP to help with marketing. So that's kind of where I started, and here I am today, still working for RP, loving it. It's been great, yeah.
Okay, and I also wanted to hear a bit about your experience as a powerlifter.
Yeah. So, like I said, I started, I would say, in my when I was like 20 or so, 21 maybe, like 21. I was training for it, and I just, like I said, I quickly fell in love with it. The real like hardcore aspect of pushing yourself. Because before that, I was just training like any normal gym bro, a lot of the chest and biceps. And this is the first time actually trying to train legs, and I kind of fell in love with it, and go really heavy. Um, I started
I
off
can
in the yeah. I
I
started
can
off with
definitely relate to that.
yeah. I think we all can, right? There's
Yeah,
something special about training, getting a chest and bicep pump. It makes you feel more of a man. um,
totally.
yeah, but I started in the 198 weight class, really 198, light 198. I think my first total was like, I want to say 1200, 1300, something around there.
Hmm.
And then I did a couple other meets at 198. Every meet I jumped up maybe 100 to 200, 100 to 200 pounds in my total. Ended up uh, towards the end of my career, which was 2 years ago, in the 242 weight class. My best total was 1925, I believe. The lift I'm most proud of is my 800 pound squat at 242.
Whoa.
Yeah, not a lot of people know that, since I don't know. I started getting a lot more attention as I started losing weight, which is funny. But then no one really knows my, I guess, my powerlifting background too much. But yeah, that's 800 pounds at 242, which at that time was pretty impressive. Now, not so much. There are a bunch of freaks at like 198 squatting that much, so it's pretty crazy to see how powerlifting has advanced in the last just in the last few years, but definitely in the last like 5-10 years, it's been kind of just skyrocketing, and records have been falling every other week, it seems. But yeah,
Mhm.
but because of that, I'm kind of glad I got out. When I did, I don't want to embarrass myself too much. But yeah, that's the short, I guess, version of my journey in powerlifting. But if you have any more questions about that, I'm glad to
And
elaborate.
that's quite a big jump in a weight class.
Yeah.
Is that something that you also walk around as a bodybuilder?
You mean my current weight?
Yeah, I know
So,
that you post a couple of stuff that you're currently around 250, right?
yes. I woke up this morning at 252, and only 2 weeks ago I was 234 or so. So it's been quite uncomfortable these past 2 weeks, putting on close to 20 pounds of, most of it fluid, but yeah. Uh, this is still not the heaviest I've been walking around at, though. Heaviest I got was, I think, 269, and that's when I was kind of like in my peak bulk period of like, not sure if I do bodybuilding or return to powerlifting, but kind of a phase where I'm just putting on size to kind of push my, I guess, limit a little bit. And then that's kind of when I decided to, like, not do powerlifting anymore, only because like I kept getting hurt. So that's when I started, dieting down. I don't think I plan to get up that high ever again. Maybe 260 or so in this current mass phase, but yeah.
Mhm. That 270 phase, is that part of some sort of a dreamer bulk where you were rocking a gut as well?
Surprisingly not. So that getting up to 269 was, I mean, uncomfortable, but nothing too much beyond that. It was just a lot of eating. I was eating close upwards of 1,200 grams of carbs a day. Um, and that I was only gaining maybe like half a pound of tissue a week at that uh, rate, which is a blessing and a curse, you know. Um, but yeah, it wasn't too hard to get up to that weight. I would say the hardest for me was when I was bulking up from maybe like low 200s up to like the 230s, 240s. That's when actually before I met Mike and kind of changed the whole way I approach my nutrition and my diet. Actually completely flipped it around. Um, when I first started, I kind of just did what most people did. I think most guys do this, which is they get a total calorie kind of amount they want to hit for the day. They know how much protein they want to eat. And beyond that, they kind of just try to hit their calorie target for the most part on these big bulks. And they don't really care about the ratio of fat to carbohydrates throughout the day. At the end of the day, they think as long as they get the calories, which, you know, in a sense, you know, that's like most of the equation right there. But for me, my stomach, I'm Korean. I guess I just don't process fats that well because my ancestry says that we ate a lot of rice and that's about it. So I guess all the fats were wrecking my stomach. Not sure if you want to hear this gross story of my one successful / unsuccessful bulk where I was force feeding myself to the point where I was dry heaving and like vomiting all the time because I was just trying to shove food down, and I kept doing it because, you know, I was like, I have to eat. This is the only way to grow. But not really paying attention to the macro split of anything I was eating, just kind of making sure I hit the total calorie amount and kind of following this, you know, the if it fits your macros type deal. But they got to a point where I woke up one morning and I started vomiting blood into the sink.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then I drove myself to the hospital, vomited blood right in the waiting room. They took me back, and then they pumped some saline into my stomach, which was very uncomfortable. I don't recommend you do that. And I just started projectile vomiting blood everywhere in the room. I think a few liters came out of my stomach, and then they rushed me to the OR. I woke up in the ICU, and apparently I had a malleolar Weiss tear from all the dry heaving and vomiting due to force feeding myself, trying to gain this weight. And for those that don't know what that is, I split my esophagus. I split it like vertical wise. I think about a 3-inch tear where I was internally bleeding the whole time. And they cauterized that, and I spent a whole week in the ICU and kind of slowly recovered from that incident. Lucky to be here, and then I didn't croak from that experience. But yeah.
I'm glad you learned from that. And actually, I have a story of a trainee of mine who decided to start bulk as well, and he thought that he'd get his daily macros just from drinking Coke.
Oh,
he
no.
was like, yeah, he found himself in a situation where he was consuming like 50 grams of protein per day, but the rest of his calories came strictly from just soda.
Wow. How did that turn out?
Horrible. He just got fat.
Oh, no. I mean, that's kind of expected, but
yeah. Now, you already sort of mentioned it, but I'd love to know a bit more about your transition from powerlifting and the appeal in bodybuilding.
Yeah, for sure. So we all know why I stopped powerlifting is because, you know, I kept getting the recurring injuries. The last 3 meet preps I had, and I had meets, you know, that I signed up for, I had to drop out of because literally 2-3 weeks out, I get the same like spots on my, you know, my elbows, my biceps, my shoulder, where it just, you know, I couldn't move the weight anymore. It's just debilitating at that point where my arms would literally just give out when I bench from the squatting, the low bar position. It just put so much strain on my biceps. So at that point, it was either I compete and I just deal with the fact that I won't be able to push the weight that I want to, and just do that, or I, you know, try something else. And I decided to go the latter because, you know, it's people don't like to admit it, but it's not fun doing something if you're not good at it, especially if you've hit numbers before that you've already hit and you can't hit them the same numbers again. It's just not fun for me. So I just kind of put that on the back burner and tried bodybuilding. The shift from the training for powerlifting to bodybuilding was At first, luckily Mike kind of helped me through the transition. He started me off very slow, but we slowly ramped up very quickly to the most frequency and volume I've ever done in my life. I was used to maybe, hitting everything maybe twice a week. But now major body parts were getting hit anywhere from 2 to 3 times a week, and smaller muscles were getting hit anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week. And I jumped right into the fire. He asked me, actually, this is not on mic, because he asked me if I wanted to do this. He's like, hey man, so like, do you want to start off and do a standard 5-6 day routine, and then we'll bump up maybe frequency or more sessions, add in more sessions. And I said, no, just throw me into the fire. Let's do it. So we started off with a 9-session a week training block for my first pretty much true bodybuilding training block, which consisted of, 6 days of training, and 3 of them were 2-a-days. I thought I was going to kind of grind through that because I'd never done it before, but man, I was surprised. I fell in love with it. I love training, and that's probably why. But I just love being in the gym and training and kind of working towards a goal, a big lofty goal. And yeah, I had no problem with training 9 times a week. And I think the only reason why I survived that was because I was smart with the intensity. I knew that going into it, that if I pushed each session like I did for each session I did, let's say for powerlifting, I'd just break down probably in a week or 2. So I kind of took it slow, and once again, I fell in love with it. And the dieting portion of the bodybuilding, that was no worry to me whatsoever, because I actually love dieting. I think dieting down, dieting up, dieting in general is fun to do. I love tracking all those metrics. And yeah, so I think it was like a perfect fit for me, at least. Lucky for me, I guess.
I think you're the first person to actually say that.
Yeah, it's crazy, because this past diet was my first kind of true prep. Towards the end, you're quite miserable towards the end of a bodybuilding prep diet, but but I also kind of wanted to hurt myself more and do more and more. I wanted to throw more weeks at the end of the diet, let's get leaner. But luckily I have a smart team behind me and told me to stop where I was at.
Now, those 2-a-day sessions, is that something that you would see your typical bro doing his 4-hour workout just split into 2, or is that something that looks a bit different?
So yeah, you wouldn't split it completely down the middle. The way we like to do it is that we have so let's say you'll have if you did 1 session, it'd be that's 100%, right? That's all the intensity you're going to put into it. For a 2-a-day, in my head, the way I look at it is that you take about 80 to 90% of that intensity, push it to that first session, and then towards the end, I'll do push the intensity 80 to 90% around there, and then but the volume drops off a lot more that I do. So I'll do the bulk of the work in the AM, and then in the PM, I'll do things just side rear delts, biceps, something that's not super taxing and limits the fatigue systemically, and just kind of creates some local fatigue. Yeah. And okay. The AM's more for big muscle groups like legs, chest, back, things like that.
And the rest is accessory lifts.
Exactly. Exactly. We're still pushing it, but there's only so much systemic fatigue you're gonna get from doing lateral races, right?
Yeah, definitely. And do you think that your history as a powerlifter helped you in your bodybuilding career as well?
Yeah, I think it did. I think having a base of that strength level helped me not right off the bat in the bodybuilding training, but as I got accustomed to all the volume and all the frequency, that increases in bodybuilding training, I think that strength definitely helped that strength base because I was able to create a lot more stimulus to the muscles, and with the increased frequency and volume I was throwing it out, I was just growing like a weed. I guess the biggest example of that is my back. My back was non-existent before bodybuilding, and now it's not big, I'd say, but it's there now, and that's a pretty drastic change from like a year and a half of bodybuilding training. Like, and yeah, it's just kind of amazed me, and that to the point where it's like, whoa, where did that come from? I have a back now.
And it sort of ties into my next question is, what are your thoughts on the notion that most people have that you can't train for both performance or strength as well as for aesthetic goals at the same time? And what do you think about them helping each other? I mean, like if you train like a bodybuilder for powerlifting or vice versa.
Gotcha. So you're asking if you can do both at the same time.
Yeah, and if you think that each one contributes to the other as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you can do both at the same time if you want. You're just not going to get the best of both worlds. I mean, I feel like that's pretty obvious, maybe, but maybe not to some people think they can do both at the same time. I mean, you can. You're just not going to get the best results you can get if you're, specifically doing like hypertrophy or strength-based training. It's just, you just have a limited fuel gauge, and you got to see where you want to put your efforts towards. I do think that the strength training and hypertrophy training do complement each other. In that, so like powerlifters, for example, I think one of the biggest mistakes powerlifters do, especially beginners and intermediates, is that's all their training blocks are focused on strength. That's it. They're like constantly in like a low rep like phase all the time. You need those phases obviously to get stronger, but I feel like they benefit a lot from throwing, I'd say, half of their training very hypertrophy focused, because at the end of the day, the bigger the muscle, the stronger it can potentially get, right? So you build this base of muscle, and then you train it to be as strong as it can be. So I think they kind of complement each other in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just about to ask you if in hindsight now you think that after your experience in bodybuilding, if you would change something in your powerlifting training to make it a bit more efficient.
Yes. If I had a time machine, I'd go back, and I would do a lot more volume phases. Because when I first started, I fell into the kind of same trap. All I wanted to do was, I want to get stronger. And like, because it's my first time going heavy, like the numbers just keep going up. And there's to a point where it kind of flatlined. And at that point, you're still kind of pushing it. But I didn't realize it's just because I wasn't big enough at that point. But I was too stubborn, and that's when injuries started piling on. But yeah, like I said, I'd go back and do probably like half or more of my training as purely hypertrophy focused. A lot more reps, a lot more frequency, a lot more volume. And towards the end of my powerlifting career, I'd say I got a little lucky because my coach at that time, I switched coaches about halfway between my powerlifting career. My last coach, he did have me focus a lot more on hypertrophy. So I think that kind of gave me a little springboard into later on when I eventually switched to bodybuilding.
So I think we can do like sort of a quote for you that lateral raises help your total.
100%.
Okay. So now coming almost full circle towards what you were saying about dieting and everything. I wanted to talk to you about self-discipline in becoming a high-level competitor. And did it something that came naturally to you, or was it something that was built through a process?
No, yeah, that was always natural to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was due to my, upbringing, and how my parents raised me. Maybe some cultural things there too. But when I got in training, uh, like I said, I fell in love with it at first off, and then after that, after I did a bunch of research on what I thought I needed to do. I didn't say it was right, but like what I thought I needed to do to kind of progress. I just kind of jumped into the fire. I was the weird uh, 14, 15-year-old kid carrying around Tupperware of his meals, and they were all like chicken, broccoli. Same. So to this day, I can't have this like the uh, boiled chicken anymore because I've eaten so much boiled chicken breast in my life. So now just I have to cook it fresh, like on a pan, if I can stomach it. But yeah, like I said, I was carrying around like 4 Tupperwares in a backpack full of chicken, broccoli, olive oil, and sweet potatoes for years. And I didn't have to teach myself that. I never missed a training session ever unless I was deathly ill or yeah, like that doesn't happen. Yeah, I don't. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm lucky in that it's just ingrained in my DNA or something, or like I said, the way that my parents raised me. But yeah, it's nothing I had to learn. And when people ask me about like, oh, how do you stay disciplined? I literally have no advice I can give because it's just you just do it, right? My thing is, if you
Yeah.
want it, you do it. I don't understand any in between at that point.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that coming from a Russian household.
Oh
That
yeah.
sort of mentality is, yeah, kind of ingrained into you.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So Mike's, I don't know, Mike's Russian. He's a Russian.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
I
He's
know
he's
he's Jewish, but
Russian Jew. He's actually from Moscow. He moved here when he
okay.
was 7 years old. Like immigrated. His whole family up and left, to escape, Russia. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's so like like that's funny because like we like there's our mindsets are so similar in that, and like a lot of it's like you said due to like kind of cultural, you know,
Yeah.
things.
I never realized he was Russian. I'm
Yeah.
assuming Mikhail sort of turned
Yes.
into Mike.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Good to know.
I think his full name is Mikhail uh, Alexandrovich. Am I saying that right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Israetel. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have any experience of your clients or guys that you've coached that were struggling and it didn't come as natural to them, that
so
you kind of struggled to put that forward as well?
so here's the thing. Yeah, this is one really I think really big misconception people have. I do not train anyone or coach anyone. Uh,
Really?
yes, and here's why. And I struggle with it too sometimes, but here's why. I've attempted to help out some friends slash acquaintances like way long ago, right?
Hmm.
And then I always get to it, it happens more so than not that they just drop off or they feel like they need a therapist to talk to. Like they treat me as a therapist of the sorts, which I
Yeah.
I understand why it happens, but I didn't sign up for that. And I understand that coaching is fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, is
Yeah.
part programming for your client, but also kind of I'm not saying this to be to talk down on anyone, but they need some of them need hand holding more than others, right? Like kind of like talk them
Yeah.
through issues, which I totally understand. That's human nature. They want kind of like reassurances and someone to give them positive reinforcements. But I just learned that I'm not the person to do that. I look I, I,
Hmm.
I want I want to give people a plan that's logically thought out, and I want you to execute, and I want you to give me
Hmm.
feedback, and from that feedback, we alter whatever needs to be altered to help you be successful. And anything beyond that is noise to me. Like oh I like I felt like I mean, I care about your day, in, in the sense that, we're all humans and need to like express ourselves. But like when it comes to like coaching and you're paying me for a service, man, it's hard. It's hard to kind of separate those two. So that's why I kind of make a hard stance not to coach anyone per se. I've thought about the idea of maybe like, hey, maybe I can um, present myself as not a coach, but a training and nutrition programmer. In that, it's in the word, right? All I do is program for you, and that's it. But I'm not sure how well that would work, or if it's worth my time at that point. But that's why I don't coach, unfortunately. Even though people have asked me like, do you coach? I'm like, no, sorry. And then but that's fine, because I know so many good coaches that I just point them to them, like, here, these guys are great. They know what they're talking about, so give them a shot. But yeah.
I'm guessing template work would probably something that would work better for you.
No, so like template work, but like like obviously customized template for each person would be something that's fine by me. But I feel like it's inevitable that emails will come through, ask with kind of other things, which is fine. Like I said, I understand that's part of the game, but I don't want to be part of that game.
Yeah, I get you. I can speak from experience. I've got a couple of clients that I think we're talking like 60 or 70% of the time, and I have to convince them to go and do another set, and we wind up just throwing, I think, 2 exercises maybe.
Yeah,
an entire 1 hour session.
Which is fine if that's what they want to pay for, but yeah.
And about your nutrition as a bodybuilder, is that something that you were also considering when you were doing powerlifting as well? Did you ever try to cut weight or try to fit in to a certain weight class that you didn't necessarily fit in at that point?
Yes. So during powerlifting, I mean, I would say most of my career is just literally hypercaloric. I mean, that can be pretty obvious in that I started as a light 198 and I moved up to 242. So obviously that mostly hypercaloric. But yeah, there were plenty of times where I was on the brink or way past the weight class that I wanted to compete in the lower weight class, where I dieted, but not as methodically as I have done now as a bodybuilder. Mainly just because I didn't know any better. So before I would, obviously maybe like 3 months out, start just eating less. I'd count macros for sure and count total calories, but not as stringently as I do now. But I would, cut it down maybe like 400, 500 calories and go from there and just kind of cut. And then about a week or 2 out, that's when I kind of started thinking about, hey, maybe, that's when I start manipulating carbs, water, and salt, fluids, all that stuff to kind of make the weight. And yeah, I've done plenty of like last week water cuts to make weights. Most of them have been in the, I would say, 8 to 12 pound range weight cut. I feel like, I mean, that's not great for performance, but I feel like that's unfortunately pretty standard for a lot of guys in powerlifting that are trying to be very competitive. One time I did this stupid cut, which I don't suggest anyone do ever, because it's pointless to do. But I did a cut from 224 to 198, 26-pound weight cut. And it was just, I thought I was going to die. I could have died, I think, towards the end, where I was doing hot water baths to get the last few pounds off. And each time I'd come out, my heart rate was like 150, 160, and it would never drop. I was literally like, for hours on end, my heart rate would be like, I could feel my heart through my head and every part of my body. And I thought I was going to die. But I made weight. Yay. And I performed terribly, as expected. Never do that. And if I could just add on to that, for anyone listening that is a powerlifter, that is not, so if you're not trying to break any world records or win any national championship or world championship, do not cut weight. That is one thing I wish I never did. I wish I never cut weight, other than maybe my, trying to get into the top 10 ranking or something like that. Then maybe at that point I'd consider it. But beyond that, there's no real point. You're going to go into a local competition and you're going to win a plastic trophy. Why? Get stronger. That's all you need to
do. I think that I've got a friend who actually tops you with his weight cut with when I mean with his stupidity. He decided it would be a good idea to take clenbuterol right before a competition.
Oh,
just to cut
Lord.
a few pounds. Yeah.
Unfortunately,
he found himself in the hospital and just gave up on the meat.
Oh no! I mean, thank God he kind of gave up on the whole doing the meat after that. But unfortunately, that's like a big thing. People run into, like, they think they have to cut weight for some reason because they see, I guess, their stronger guys doing it. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's like ego thing. I don't know. Either way, my advice, and I hope people, whoever's listening to this, take it. Don't cut weight. You don't need to. In the short term, it might, like I said, you might win a $5 trophy, but beyond that, there's no real benefit, man. But yeah.
I can definitely understand people cutting weight for stuff like mixed martial arts or boxing, but for powerlifting, definitely not.
Yeah, when it's one-on-one and it adds to your, I guess, record in any kind of combat sport, that totally makes sense. But there's no success win-loss record for powerlifting. It's just whatever your total is your total at that point,
right? Yeah. Now, when you go into prep or just before any powerlifting meets or competitions, anything like that, how could you describe your mental fatigue going into it in the last few weeks?
For powerlifting?
Both.
So powerlifting wise, going into my peak, so I would usually have 2 to 3 very strenuous strength blocks, usually 2 before my peak block, before my powerlifting meets. So when I start my peak block, which is about 3 to 4 weeks out from my competition, I feel extremely fatigued, mentally, physically, all of it. And then as the peak goes on, that fatigue kind of drops off. And that's the whole point of it, kind of a peak, right? It's you want to kind of drop off fatigue while keeping your fitness and your strength up. So that's how you should feel. So if you don't feel like, total shit going into a peak, maybe you should push it a little harder next time. That's kind of up to debate. But but for my bodybuilding, so I've only done one kind of test peak, which was ended 2 weeks ago. That one, boy, I didn't have any expectations going into it, but I didn't know how mentally draining that was going to be. Physically, it wasn't that bad. Physically, because bodybuilding training, is way higher reps, so there's less weight you're loading, so you have less chance of injury, and your joints should feel little less fatigued. You should have a lot less local fatigue due to your training. So my body wasn't beat up all that much, just the normal little nags here and there. But mentally, that diet and that constant grinding, training while in such a huge deficit, mental fatigue, that was the most I've ever endured. But
Was that something you can compare to your massive weight cut?
No, because the massive weight cut, it was brought on more acutely, in that the only real terrible time was the last day before making weight, where I had to cut all this weight, and it was like an acute mental fatigue, where I just dealt with it because it sucked at that point, and that's all. But for the bodybuilding one, it was like months of it just building up the whole time, little by little. And like the closer you got, the further it felt, the further away it felt. Like it was a weird time dilation thing. The closer I got to the meet, the longer each day seemed. Every day seemed so long, and the time between each meal seemed longer and longer and longer, because you're pretty hungry, even though you don't think so. Because I didn't feel too hungry, but like my body knew I was hungry because I was in such a hypocaloric state that it just everything was challenging to do. Like walking around, like walking up the stairs, just like doing anything, like go grocery shopping. Oh, it was tough. I will say that it's gave me a newfound respect for bodybuilders that actually do prep correctly.
Gotcha. And do you attribute that only to the calorie deficit, or was there anything else that came into play?
Oh no, it was that plus the training. So like, if you told me just do a calorie deficit and just sit around, it'd probably be much easier. But it was literally that, and your body has no energy. So when you go into training, you have a hard training session ahead of you, and that was like the first time I kind of like went into each set going, why am I doing this? But I knew I was doing that in my head. But you kind of for a split second, I asked myself like, why the hell am I doing this? Like, why is it worth it? But yeah, in the end, it is. It's just it sucks in the moment. But yeah, that was definitely the hardest prep I've ever had, regardless of any powerlifting prep I had too.
Mm-hmm. And did you use any sort of strategy to try to manipulate it and not being so mentally fatigued and feeling that bad?
Yes. So it starts from actually the diet, in that I try to space out my meals so I don't get so hungry towards the end of the night, because I'd rather be a little hungry during the daytime and less hungry before I go to sleep. Because if you're hungry and you're trying to go to sleep, I don't know if anyone's dieted and fucked up their calories to the point where they're starving right before sleep, but you can't sleep. It's so hard to do. And you constantly wake up all the time. And sleep is like a huge factor in your recovery and overall fatigue. So I focused on making sure I had enough food in my stomach right before I slept, so that I could get somewhat restful sleep, so that I kept my fatigue as low as possible and my recovery as high as possible. I think a lot of guys make that mistake. Even guys, really smart guys, they just don't think of that too much. Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing I did to kind of manage fatigue and overall stress. And that and this is something I always do, but I always keep at least an hour and a half to 2 hours at the end of the night to just sit around and watch TV, watch trash TV, watch Netflix, do nothing. It's like it's literally built into my schedule. Like that is not an option not to have. I will stop work and do that, because that's a huge factor in just kind of like reducing overall stress levels, like once again, and keeping fatigue as low as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to finish off with a question towards you about powerlifters listening to this and deciding to do bicep curls all of a sudden.
Oh yeah.
What do you think that some of the biggest mistakes that powerlifters make when they're trying to get jacked?
Biggest mistakes. Okay, this is actually a pretty easy one. Because the way powerlifting training is set up, especially for beginners and like intermediates, I don't think they have enough variation in their movements, because they think they're squat, bench, deadlift, right? So to get jacked, they'll just do more of that and maybe lessen the weight and do more reps, which is great and all, but you need variation so you don't, create too much local fatigue and get hurt. So I would suggest make sure you're switching movements out when needed, that you're spacing out your volume properly. So powerlifters, like, once again, they have a tendency to kind of do all their like one muscle group work in one day in a week, right? or maybe 2 days. So think about just breaking your volume up, across maybe 2, 3, 4 days, 5 days, instead of trying to cram your whole shoulder session in one day. I never understood that too. Like, how guys, even gym bros do this, have a shoulder day, like one shoulder day in a week. Like, how much work do you think you can do in one shoulder session to have enough volume to grow enough? Right? It's suboptimal at best. So yeah, those are two big things. Keep variation in mind, and keep in mind that you should break up your volume and frequency, so it pretty much optimizes your hypertrophy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, since you've already mentioned that you are not coaching, I'm assuming that that's not really something that we need to discuss. But are there any projects from Renaissance Periodization or anything from you that that you'd like to keep us let us know about?
Well, for me, not so much. It's like you said, I don't really plan on coaching. I don't think. It's still always kind of on the back of my mind, but who knows? RP wise though, recently, within the last, I think, year and a half, we released a RP diet app. It's pretty much, so all the principles that go into that app is what I pretty much follow, just on an Excel sheet at this point. Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I'd like to really get out there. I mean, it's only, I think,
I've been curious, what's the difference between the RP Diet app and other dieting apps that are out there?
Yeah, so the other ones like MyFitnessPal is a big one, right?
Yeah.
That's a tracker, in that you tell it what you ate, and it says, oh, you ate that. You keep log of it, which is great. The RP diet app is completely different in that you put in your stats, your body type, your goals, like what do you want to do? You want to lose weight, you want to maintain, you want to, gain whatever you want. And then it gives you the diets. Like, these are your macros, yeah, for the day and for each meal. And it tells you meal times for you. So to optimize recovery between training, it asks you when you train. So it builds everything around when you train, when you wake up, when you eat. So it's a diet coach in that sense, where MyFitnessPal, it's just kind of a tracker, right? It doesn't tell you what to eat. How do you lose weight? It's not going to tell you how to lose weight. Or how do you gain weight? It's not going to tell you how to do that. So this kind of does all that for you. And every week it asks you questions so that you can either stay on track, or if you're falling behind, it tells you to kind of it cuts your calories more. If you're ahead of schedule, you can have the option to pull back on your diet. But it's completely different from MyFitnessPal in that sense.
Right. No, just so people don't misunderstand, when you're saying body type, you're definitely not talking about whether they're a mesomorph, an ectomorph, or
No,
both.
Yeah.
There are enough YouTube ads out there to make people confused about that.
Wait! You don't believe in DNA dieting? Are you telling me you don't believe in DNA dieting?
Maybe they'll make one up about I don't know, specific to your hair color or any other.
You know what? I'm more partial to the an astrology-based dieting system. I think we should start that. I think that would do so well.
I don't know why people are so drawn towards things that are quote unquote individualized when.
I'll tell you why. Because it's easy. They don't have to think. Boom, I like that. That's it. That's the answer right there, right? That's the answer. I don't have to do anything else.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, thanks a lot, Charly. I really appreciate your time. And do you want to leave any of your information if people want to reach out for to do a podcast, or again, not coaching? Don't get confused. Charly's not coaching.
It's just if you want to check me out and follow me, my Instagram handle is Charlton_Banks, reference to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, if anyone knows.
I was about to ask you.
Yes, it is. So I am born and raised in Philly, so it's very relevant.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. But besides that, yeah, feel free to visit and ask me questions. Be glad to be back on whenever. Thank you for having me on. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
All
Have
right.
a great
Thanks.
day, Charlie.
You too.